As I've said over and over again, symptoms are information. Symptoms are not an indication of disease. I don't have a mental disease. They're information. They're information letting me know that there's some kind of distress that my brain or my body are experiencing. And I need to look at it with curiosity instead of judgment. I started getting really curious about whether or not I could handle a move again. And I've joked about that on my podcast. I've joked about, I wonder if I could go through a move and not experience hypomania, not experience depression. I didn't really want to find out, but I was really curious about it. And lately I've been joking about whether or not I manifest this move because I was curious about it. But whether or not that's the case, it doesn't matter. We did end up going through a move. And so back in May of this year was when we realized that we probably needed to move for some family circumstances. And so I immediately set in place a plan. I thought, I know that moving is a trigger for me. And I know that in the past, I have triggered some hypomanic symptoms and depressive symptoms in succession. And so I utilized my mood cycle survival guide. So the things that I did in this move that really made a huge difference. Number one, in the mood cycle survival guide, we've got the 4 steps. So number one is your team, your response team. And I was very careful to make sure that I made a clear map for myself of the things that needed to be done. And I had to continually evaluate it because as you're going through moves, things come up. But I was able to identify what things do I need help with. And I was able to go to people that I knew that I had relationships with, people that I had talked to about, being on my team and ask for help. And again, as I've talked to people before about the mood cycle survival guide, it's really important to make sure that you set clear, healthy boundaries around that assistance so that you don't burn out those friendships and those relationships. You don't put undue stress on them. The second thing that I did was I made sure that I paid attention to any triggers that have caused problems for me in the past and paid attention to symptoms that I was experiencing. As I've said over and over again, symptoms are information. Symptoms are not an indication of disease. I don't have a mental disease. They're information. They're information letting me know that there's some kind of distress that my brain or my body are experiencing. And I need to look at it with curiosity instead of judgment. And so I really paid attention to how I was doing on a daily basis. And mindfulness meditation was a huge help for me with that. And also my bullet journaling, because I really paid attention to how I'm feeling, what's my energy level, how is my mind doing? Am I struggling with any kind of racing thoughts? And I have tools that I utilize that help me if I am struggling with sleep. So one of the things that I found when I get really stressed out, if there's a lot of stress in my life, is I might wake up in the middle of the night. And that's not good for sleep. You need to make sure that you can get to sleep. And I would wake up with my mind fully awake, worrying about the problems. And so there are 2 tools that I use. I have a couple of supplements that I take that help calm my mind and my brain down. They don't make me tired. They just kind of calm down my nervous system a little bit and let me get back to sleep. So that was really important to utilize that. And the other thing is, again, mindfulness meditation, and then making sure that my exercise routine was supportive of where I was at that time. And for me, when I'm under a lot of stress, I don't do well if I'm pushing myself with exercise. So I backed off on my running and chose to walk instead. So instead of running during this time, I would just go on walks. It didn't require any kind of mental effort on my part to go out on a walk. All I had to do was put my shoes on and walk out the door. A lot of days I wasn't even tracking it. I like to track with my watch just to keep track of how far I'm going and that. But some days I didn't even do that because I thought that doesn't feel good to me today, so I'm not going to do that. But it was really super beneficial to continue to do some form of exercise. And that's something I've discovered over the years is what is supportive of me when I'm in that state. So those things together helped me to pay attention to my symptoms and support myself mentally and emotionally. And that's where the power priorities come in. There were a number of things that I eliminated from my life temporarily while we were going through the move. Obviously, anybody who listens to this podcast knows I went on hiatus. I stopped doing the podcast temporarily while we went through the move. I did not post anything to my blog. I was posting very little to my social media. And that was because those were things that didn't have to be done during that time. Those were not power priorities for me during that time. And there were a few other things that I eliminated temporarily from my life so that I made sure that the things that mattered most were getting done. And I've talked before about how your power priorities may vary from time to time, but there are a few things that won't. Number one, I need to make sure that my mental state is being looked after. I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself mentally and emotionally so that I can continue to function in a healthy way and I can continue to support my family as well. I also need to make sure we're eating. There are basic needs that need to be met, and those things need to be prioritized. And I make sure that I evaluate things on a regular basis. I utilize a bullet journal. That's part of my step 7 in my Simple 7 protocol that I utilized for and teach for healing and recovery from bipolar. And utilizing that bullet journal helps me to pay attention to how things are going, how am I feeling, what things are working, what things aren't working, and not also keeping track of all the things that have to happen in my life. And so those things were really crucial in managing the stress that was my move. And then, of course, the last piece of it was rebooting my system. How do I get back to fully functioning and healthy, balanced mental state after the move? And it was really interesting. That was the time that I was a little nervous about. I thought, I don't know if I'm going to crash when we move. Did I do a good enough job paying attention to how I was doing and managing myself during the moving process, the packing and showing our house and moving. And also, was I going to be able to resist the compulsion to binge watch shows? And I am very happy to report that I didn't have any binge watching at all. In fact, I had a few days where I spent a little extra time on social media when I felt like I was kind of worn out at the end of the day, but I was able to catch that pretty quickly and recognize that my brain needed some kind of way to unwind that was healthy for me, that I was supportive of me. And I was able to gradually re-implement my exercise routine and mindfulness meditation back to, it's my full practice. And I started doing my morning pages again. And I, over a few weeks, was able to just gradually get everything back on track, and I didn't have a crash. It was pretty amazing. This was an incredible experience for me. And even though I'm not, I wasn't super thrilled that we had to go through a move, it was awesome from a self-reflective standpoint and testing this out now to see how far I've come in my healing journey.